Let's start out with just sort of framing this a little bit. All volunteers have skills, right? Every volunteer we work with has skills. With Habitat, right, you use volunteers that have all kinds of skills. They're using their carpentry skills, they're using construction management skills, and so forth. Those of you who might run mentoring programs are using volunteers who have skills. The kinds of programs we all operate still rely on the skills of volunteers. This term, which really has become sort of coined in the last about 4 or 5 years of skills-based volunteers, really doesn't mean that the other volunteers are unskilled. It simply means that when you're using these types of volunteers, you've recruited them specifically for some type of skill, credential, or experience that's just not available in the general population. So what's different about working with skill-based volunteers? What either from your experience or what's your sense of what's different?
I'm with Catholic Community Services. I'm the program coordinator for volunteer church services. So we serve low-income seniors and low-income disabled adults with a variety of many things to help keep them in their own home. And I have a couple people who are professionals. One of them happens to be a professional licensed electrician. And there are many, many times that we get a call that someone has an issue with electricity, and I don't want to send in somebody that's not licensed to that home or apartment or wherever they are living, and so it's a real blessing to be able to have him and have his knowledge and expertise in that.
So I'm assuming that one of the things that would happen with that example is that he's not working every day as a volunteer for you, right? And you just call him when you need him?
Yes, he just works with us when he's called to do so.
Right. So unlike a program volunteer that might show up every Tuesday and tutor kids after school for 2 hours, he's sort of on call, specifically for his expertise.
All of our volunteers are on call, but yes, that's it.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I mean, I've got one girl, she's a volunteer, she has a master's degree in social work.
Mm-hmm.
They can solve the problems without having to call the director.
Okay. It's definitely, so one of the things you're going for is as you go up that skill ladder, you hope that there's maybe a little less oversight or a little less needing to come back to you.
You can breathe.
Right. Okay, you can breathe. That would be a good advantage, right? One of the things I think is different about working with skill-based volunteers is that when you have a group of general volunteers working in a program, it's sort of like the folks with their heads in the canoe, right? They just keep walking, they just keep going, and as long as you tell them you're on the team, you're going, just keep going ahead, they're going to be pretty satisfied because that's what they signed up for, is to be a part of a group with a program. With a skilled volunteer, this scenario doesn't really work. They're not heads in the canoe type people. You might have 2 or 3 people with the same skills. Right now you have 1 electrician. At some point you might have 2 or 3 electricians. You have 1 social worker, you might have 3, 4, 5 social workers. So you might have people that have the same skill, and you might have multiple ones of them, but you really have to think of it as an individual volunteer and think very much about how you're working with that individual. Generally, the work is going to be project-based rather than program-based, and it's going to be short-term or reoccurring, but on a project basis, like the electrician who comes in whenever there is a project. And it's more like having an unpaid staff or a consultant than it is having a program volunteer. The other thing that's really different about skills-based volunteers is the volunteers usually want to participate in the design of the work that they're doing, or they want to be at a level where they're making decisions. And your electrician probably doesn't want to take direction from you about how to do his electrical work. And your social worker is happy to make at least decisions up to a certain level that they're comfortable with before they come back and ask for direction. So that's very common. And so in most cases, what they're looking for is for you to describe the outcome that you want and for you to let them participate in making decisions about how they get to that outcome. They're much more involved in making those decisions. Their experience is going to be enhanced if you can pair them with opportunities to learn something. So you're taking their skills and you're extending their skills. Even if all that means is they're taking skills from the business environment and they're adapting them to the nonprofit environment. That's That's interesting to people, that's fun to do. Or they're taking a skill where they sort of have the foundation skill, but they're going to do the research and training and so forth to expand that skill further. They're also going to have an enhanced experience if you give them an opportunity to be involved in an environment where there's diversity and where there's intergenerational opportunities. That's something that most people have a very high value for. So what are some possible benefits of using skills-based volunteers? What attracted you to this session? Because you were probably thinking of getting some sort of a benefit for your organization.
I would say with the type of work that we can provide, that it's really nice to have professional people.
Anything else that you can think of as a benefit?
We're looking to the future
because
we have very few people at the top, and should something happen to one of us, what's going to happen, you know? And I would like to share some of the more skilled jobs, but it's tricky because of location, et cetera, et cetera.
So it's almost an aspect of succession planning or continuity planning.
Yeah,
that is something.
And present time help too.
Sure,
So
right.
you're not doing it all yourself.
But I think that's very interesting that you're thinking about. These are people that you can really impart some understanding to them about some of the management issues in your organization that you wouldn't do with a regular program volunteer.
Right.
That's really interesting.
Well, in the field of mentoring, many of us are working part-time and doing it all. And we also have a consortium of mentoring programs in the county. So getting volunteers who maybe they're not interested in mentoring, but they can help us to recruit, to promote programs, to let people know about mentoring, to put together brochures or whatever other things that they could do in kind. It's just a very shoestring type of business.
So they let you get things done that you normally wouldn't have time to get done, staff and resources to get done. Right. So skills you can't afford to pay for. They can often complete work that's on the back burner, like you might not do that brochure, but if somebody's there to do it, then you're going to take advantage of that. They can sometimes teach the staff new skills. So you know, somebody who comes in and creates a recruitment campaign or a marketing campaign for the program could be teaching a staff person, so the staff person could do the updating of the brochure or carry out the campaign the next time around. They also might become a donor, right? Most volunteers are donors. Skill-based volunteers are often donors as well as volunteers, and they may have the relationships and connections to bring you new donors, and they may become a high-value board member. So what kind of professional skills might be helpful to your organization? Think about the projects that are on your to-do list that haven't been, like, they've been on the to-do list for 6 months. I have a really long list of those projects, right?
organizing fundraisers.
Fundraisers, okay.
A grant writer.
A grant writer, right? Even if you're going to do major grants, sometimes there's grants that you can't get to, that you could be doubling the number of grants you get out the door if you had somebody who was working with you. Is there somebody here too?
Graphics.
Graphics, right.
Someone with high expertise in computers that also is good in social media and has the time to actually use those skills for us.
And aren't we always finding that, especially with technology, systems are changing, expectations are changing, our volunteers, our donors, our funders are all changing their expectations, and sometimes keeping up on the skill sets we need to meet those new expectations can be very challenging. But bringing somebody else in who already has those skills, they can either do it for you or they can do it and teach at the same time.